good morning to those in attendance and certainly our panelists. Our panelists are all familiar with the process that we go through for the usual roundtables. What I would like to start off and do is just go through a quick introduction for those who are on the panelist. I'll call you out by name. Just give a very quick your name, your company, which title is with the company, and where you are located, since we have people from all over. So I'll start off with you, Jaime.
My name's Jaime Villescas. I own Alignment Specialist LLC. We're in Midland, Texas, and we specialize on steering, suspensions, and alignments.
Thank you, Jaime. Shane.
Shane Boatman Construction, Tomball, Texas. My son and I are 50-50 partners in our construction company. We're general contractors, mainly concentrating on commercial.
Thanks, Shane. Camille.
Camille Hamilton with CMIT Solutions. We're a full-service IT company. My franchise is located in the Northwest Houston suburbs, and we primarily provide managed services to small to medium business and keep them out of trouble.
Thank you, Camille. Rand, I'll let you introduce yourself as well, since you'll be participating some.
Rand Jenkins from Mountain Mojo Group. We're a digital marketing agency out of Flagstaff, Arizona, and we also help to represent emergent partners.
Thank you, Rand. Denise?
Denise Davis. I own a independent insurance agency in Tomball, Texas, and we specialize on personal lines and small to medium commercial insurance.
All right. Thank you, Denise. And lastly, Anthony.
Yeah, my name is Anthony Bolton. I'm with GCSN, which is Global Compliance Safety Network. I'm the vice president of the company. We're a risk management company that works with insurance companies, oil companies to house their contract management systems and stuff like that, MSAs, things of that nature. And I'm in West Texas. Well, I'm in charge of West Texas, North Texas, Arizona, California, and Nevada. So.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. So for those who are in attendance, just to give everybody a little bit of information on what they can expect from this and how these conversations go, there is no presentation. These are fairly informal conversations. This is a topic that we've touched on several times, and all the panelists involved have participated in. So what you're going to get is you're going to get some insights, just some honest conversations about what's going on in various markets and what various different types of business owners are seeing as it relates to labor shortages. And we're just going to have a talk, and you should pick up some insights from this talk, learn some different things, see some different things, see what other people are doing. That's the point of these conversations. Those in attendance, you can certainly, through the chat function, submit any questions or comments, and those will be given to us so we can answer any questions that you have. And we'll go ahead and get started. So labor shortages. For the group, the number one issue that is affecting any business, be it large or small, is labor shortages and availability of qualified talent. And that's why this is such a, it's obviously a very passionate topic that we've talked about in the past. And it's certainly something that we talk a lot about, and we're going to continue to talk a lot about, because it absolutely affects small to mid-sized companies. And really, at the end of the day, small to mid-sized companies, what's really going to win the day for people in the situations of the people on the call is creativity. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some creativity, some creative, points of view on this subject, to some creative things that we've been doing to address these labor shortages. So what I'd like to start off is open up to the panelists. What are some of the specific challenges that y'all are facing with labor shortages? Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Shane.
Our subcontractors are the ones that seem to be having the most trouble getting skilled labor. That seems to be our biggest issue as far as the labor force. And then On the supply chain side, what they're telling us is they don't have enough people to build the things that we need, as far as transformers and components, electrical panels, anything we need in construction. While they seem to say they have the product, they don't have the people to build them. So that's a challenge right now that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think that, Shane, honestly, that a lot of the supply chain issues and a lot of the labor issues, in a lot of cases, go hand in hand. I mean, we've talked in the past about what are the top three issues that are facing small to mid-sized businesses, and in order, they're labor shortages, inflation, and supply chain. And I think there's a lot of intertwining within that. So Shane, it's affecting you. I mean, obviously. People that you're trying to hire, but people from your vendors and your subcontractors certainly is affecting you as well. Who else? I'd like to go through a few of these different points and then go back and revisit them. Who else has some specific challenges that they'd like to share?
Well, on my side, we're pretty much fully staffed, and we have been. We never even lost anybody through COVID, but I'm looking forward to growing our business, and I've been, looking into what's going to happen once we open a second shop. And I've been going to Midland College, to see about classes for some of my current staff to take and, get more educated. I don't guess there's really a labor shortage per se, but the key word that you said, Maurice, was qualified labor shortage. I had a couple of guys walk in my shop yesterday, and I thought they were customers, and they were asking for work. And I'm like, well, we're fully staffed, but I would like to have your name and number just in case, we do need somebody in the near future. And I asked them, do you know how to do anything with cars? And they both looked at each other, and they're like, no. And I'm like, well, I thought to myself, what are you doing here? It doesn't make sense to go look for a job that you don't know how to do. But it's happening everywhere. And yeah, I mean, the supplies that we don't have right now, and people don't want to go back to work for some reason. Another thing I was looking at is, especially for somebody as small as I am, I was looking at Midland College when I walked over there. I went over there 2 weeks ago, and there was plenty of people in there in the classrooms. There was people showing up. They had a class that day that I showed up, and I bet at least 30, 40 people were there. And I'm thinking to myself, well, where are all these people going once they graduate? And my take on that is that, I mean, most of these people are going to the big guys, to the big corporations, because they can afford to pay more. They can afford more time to train. And I think that's part of our deal there as far as small business goes.
Yeah, and I think you touch on a few things there, and we're going to talk a lot more about this a little bit later, because one of the things that stemmed from these roundtable conversations that we've had in the different markets is talking about some ways that the business community can address labor shortages, or at least pool their resources to do some things with labor shortages. And you touch on the colleges, you touch on the local schools and school districts, and basically getting people trained to work the jobs that the community needs, that keeps them in the community. Because you're right, they get jobs, they go work for the big people, because, I mean, guess what? Working for the big people's sexy. I mean, I work for Amazon, or I work for whoever. It is. There's a stigma about that, and I think that part of what we're going to have to overcome as smaller and mid-sized businesses is the stigma that's associated with people working for these larger companies, because those situations aren't necessarily the best. Camille, you had something, and then Anthony, I see you have your hand up.
Well, yeah, so I had to change my whole philosophy. At the 22 years I've been in business, I've always wanted more seasoned techs because we deal with lots of different environments, and I don't want to have to constantly battle about what kind of person do I send out on a call. But since COVID, I've had to change my attitude about that, and I started looking at junior, more entry level technicians to do a lot of the basics or at least initial troubleshooting. And that worked well, except that, after they get some good experience, then they go to work for the big guys. And so I'm just having to adjust my philosophy of I expect them to stay with me like my other techs who have been with me a long time.
Yeah. And it's about evolving our businesses based upon what we want to do and what our goals are. I mean, if we want to grow, then we certainly have to be bringing in new people and new generations of people. And this is going to be our topic we're going to talk about next month is we have to bridge the gap with those generations. And we have to learn to not necessarily adapt, but we have to learn what we can do in order to make those people successful in our organizations. And Camille, you hit on a point that I was going to hit on later is we cannot be afraid of turnover because turnover is going to exist. And it's not just a function of the current labor market, it's a function of current, past, and future labor markets. And if we're afraid to hire people and train them and turn them into good employees because we're worried about them being good employees somewhere else, then we're never going to have good employees in the first place. And so we can't be afraid to do that, but we have to plan for it and manage it as best we can. So that's a great point. Anthony, you had points you wanted to make.
Well, as you know, as well, I have a safety consulting company, and we deal with a lot of. I have a 30 or 40 employees on that aspect, and a lot of them have been loyal to me in a sense to just of me being who I am as an individual, as their boss or whatever the case may have you. But I've lost a lot of employees because I've been in the oil and gas industry for the majority of my career. Over a decade, I've been in the oil and gas industry. So I feel like we have the biggest, I can't really speak on that, but I feel like we have a big issue with turnovers and people leaving for an extra 50 cents or $1 or whatever the case may have you. That happens a lot out here to us. I've lost 5 guys this year alone, just based off of me sending them out for a larger company, and that company decides to hire my employee. I never really hold anybody back from that opportunity because I feel that's kind of selfish. So if they decide they want to go on to that, I still get to, retain more work and assets from them. But as far as a lot of guys have been with me for 10 years plus, and I really look at me as an individual for leadership. What am I doing in my leadership role? Am I finding new ways to create opportunities for myself to be a better leader? So the better the leader I am, the more people will willing to follow and stay with me and not just go for another 50 cents or $1. So sometimes it can be the labor shortage, but it also could, I always reflect on myself as the individual that's in charge of these individuals to kind of look at what can I do to be a better leader, to make sure that I'm implementing that and giving them that so they feel like they want to be attached to me still, regardless of the circumstances and regardless of the times or the finances.
Yeah, exactly. And you're always going to have those people that are going to jump for an extra $1 or $2 an hour. And you're also always going to have those people that jump because they think they're going to make more money because they're getting an hourly rate. I mean, we have a gentleman out in Odessa that was talking about guys that they wanted an extra $5 an hour and that somebody else was offering him extra $5 an hour. He said, well, actually, I'm not going to give you an extra $5 an hour because with your bonuses and your other incentive compensation at your current level, you're making more money. And so they said, okay, well, we're going to leave. And they left, and they very quickly found out that they were making more money previously. So a lot of times that extra $1 an hour, I mean, it's not necessarily all it's cracked up to be, but there are a lot of people that chase that, and you're always going to have those people. But Anthony, your point of saying that the better I lead them, the better it is for them to stick around is absolutely positively true. And it goes, that's a big part of it, but also goes beyond that. It goes beyond taking people And we can especially do this in smaller organizations and even in larger organizations. We can do this with our management team, and the management team can pass it down. But what we need to do is be able to, first of all, hire the right people. So we're hiring based upon core core values, not just skills, because we can teach skills. Camille, you have experienced people on your team that can teach younger techs to do business the way that they need to do business. So as long as they have a good base and they've got experience or they've got potential in the industry, then you can train them, you can teach them to do business the way that you want business to be done. And that's going to be the case with anybody that you bring in, no matter how experienced, how much experience or how little experience they have. So, but you also have to hire the right people that are going to fit into your organization. So we hire the right people, we put them in positions, we teach them how to be, not just how to do the work, but how to be successful in our organizations. And we provide them that leadership, and we provide them that environment that it's going to be very hard for them to get anywhere else. And that helps with retention. So yeah, Anthony, that was a good point there. Denise, to put you on the spot, looked like you had something you wanted to mention.
Well, I mean, I see it from a couple of different perspectives. Yes, as a business owner, I'm having trouble finding and hiring qualified individuals. There's still, there's this new function of people have decided that they just don't want to work in an office and they want to work remotely. And if you don't have that kind of position available for someone, it turns into like the 50 cent an hour conversation. Like they're not willing to negotiate over that. We also insure a ton of small businesses and contractors who are seeing those labor shortages, and we're helping them, navigate that as far as their cost structure for their business, because it's impacting their payroll, their gross sales, the jobs they get. And then, we also see it, of course, on the supply chain side, where like we've got clients like Shane who will say, yeah, my gross sales are down because we can't complete projects because we can't get parts and pieces and materials. So it's all ends of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Rand, you have a point you want to make?
Just a quick statistic, and I've got a handful of these. I'll jump in, but when they're relevant, especially since Anthony brought it up, and now it seems like Denise is supporting this, but the turnover rate nationally is up 20%. So typically if somebody with a 10-person organization were to lose one person a year, right now they're losing on average 3 people per year. And it really is the main two things within that study were that there were new employee expectations. So, obviously the employees have become much more bullish than in the past as far as what they have for expectations, and the availability of hybrid arrangements. So exactly what Denise is talking about, that's really driving the turnover. A lot more people are looking at whether or not the hybrid model is appropriate for them, and they're asking for it.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about that too. And that part of the conversation inevitably comes up about the remote working thing. And I think in some cases, and we've discussed this ad nauseum, but I think in some cases it's a fad in a lot of situations. And I think people are demanding it because it's a lifestyle that people want to lead. Well, hey, if I'm a single parent, I can stay at home, take care of my kids, or I can work late at night, or I can do whatever it is that I want to do at home. I don't have to fight traffic. I don't have to go to an office. I don't have to do all of these things. And I think in a lot of cases, it certainly is a good thing. And I think that there are opportunities there. I think where the whole thing starts to fall apart is, first of all, there are positions where you can work remotely and it's effective to work remotely. There are positions where it's not. And there are also situations where smaller companies don't have the work from remote capabilities. I mean, the technology and the software is out there, and Camille, you can attest to this. There are security issues. There are file sharing issues. There are multiple setups or multiple things that you have to consider when working remotely to make sure that you've got a good, effective remote working situation. I think just from what we see out there that Some of that is starting to dwindle a little bit. I mean, there were literally people a year ago that employees were going to go on strike because companies were making them come back to the office, and it was it was turning into a mess. And so companies were having to continue to have this work from home, remote working type deal. But I think it's slowly moving more into the hybrid type of situation. So there's certain employees that, again, it makes sense. I mean, Jaime, for you, it makes sense. You don't have to have administrative staff at your place because you've got a small location. You have to make space for them. You're much better off having that space to work on vehicles than you do housing administrative staff. So it's a great thing for them to work remote. For our company and our business model, it's a very similar thing. We were already running a fairly remote work type of structure, just because of the nature of where we were doing business and how we structured a business. So it was really nothing new to us. It's just we got a lot more tools, and in order to be more effective at doing it, which we were already doing over time. But in some cases, though, I mean, you can't work on a car remotely. You can't work on a building remotely. I mean, you can't do safety inspections remotely. I mean, you can't sell equipment or move equipment remotely. So there are a lot of things that you can't do. And the stigma of remote work is certainly driving some issues, especially with the smaller companies. And there's some people out there that just demand it. I mean, if I can't find a remote job, I'm just not going to work at all. Well, I think as the situation continues to unfold, so to speak, and a lot of these remote jobs start turning into either hybrid or actual in-person jobs again, I think that people are going to have to change their expectations.
It's also a little bit interesting that, and Camille said it earlier, that when you have to modify your model and look at inexperienced people or be willing to train people in your industry, you cannot, in most cases, effectively train brand new employees remotely. So it brings some interesting, there are people out there who are willing to look at different industries and different jobs, but at the same time, they're also like, no, I don't want to come in an office. Well, we can't do both. I can't bring you in with absolutely no insurance experience and train you to do this on a Zoom call 8 hours a day. So that piece has been a little interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think training is very important. And also, and this is another recurring roundtable topic, is indoctrination into the culture. How do we get people to be participants in our culture? And that is extremely difficult to do remotely. And before, when everybody was in the office and everybody expected to be in the office, with a few exceptions here and there, then it was easy because we can just pull everybody together for lunch. Well, hey, I'm going to bring in lunch. Everybody's going to stay in for lunch. We're going to have a team building event, or we're all going to get together, or we're going to leave the office and we're all going to go to happy hour or something like that, or we're all going to go to dinner. It was a lot easier. Now, when you have people working in so many different areas, it's a lot more difficult, and you have to be a lot more deliberate in what you do. First of all, to get people in there, and then you also have to be a lot more planned and a lot more calculated. And it's difficult because when you are at a location, it's easier to get absorbed into the culture. When you're not at a location and you're sitting at home and you're dealing with kids and pets and laundry and all these other distractions that go on during the day when you're working from home, cooking, fixing lunch, whatever it is that you're running errands or finding time to run errands, you're not getting absorbed into that company culture, and that's a problem. And like I said before, there is a space for remote work, but it's still it's got to really fit in well with what the company, it has to be designed to fit in well with what the company wants to do and needs to do, and with how the company does things, and that create competitive advantages.
So, Maurice, one thing that, since we obviously can't have superintendents work remote, and it's pretty difficult for our office staff to work remote, we just run to too many papers and too many moving parts and too many jobs. what we've done that seems to be working to find help in the office and keep overhead down is we're hiring part-time people.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a young lady because her husband's offshore 5 weeks, he's inshore 3, and they got 4 kids. So the 1 day a week, she brings her daughter in, and then she gets to work 3 days a week for about 5 hours a day, and she's extremely good at it. So we're being more flexible with employees. So I've got a younger one there, and then I went to the other extreme and hired a gentleman that's already retired, and he helps estimate a few days a week based on his schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that's how we kind of have tried to be flexible with people that need jobs and also fill our needs at the same time, which I never
that goes
a part-time person in construction.
Yeah, and that goes back to getting creative, because you never would have thought of doing that before 2020. But it's going to be a big boon to your business, but you have to make sure that you do it right. So number one, you have to hire the right people first and foremost. But also some of those administrative tasks, you can take them and put them into a process. And it's a process that somebody can follow, whether they're there 40 hours a week or whether they're there 10 hours a week or 5 hours a week. And that just opens up your pool of candidates, your pool of people that you can bring in. And there's certainly a lot of people that don't mind part-time work and that are looking for part-time work. I know we hire a lot of people that way because we have work that doesn't necessarily demand someone be there full-time. And we try to cater to those people because it fits the nature of what we're doing. And so that is an exceptionally good point of really looking and saying, okay, what are the things that I have that I am struggling to do? And in some cases, there's not going to be anything you can really do about it. I have to have someone that has a certification. I have to have someone that's on site. I have to have someone that has these skills. And those things we just have to work through. But other things, like Shane, what you're talking about, we can figure out other ways around it. We have to look at those positions and say, okay, who do I have doing that right now? What is not working about that? Where am I struggling getting those things done? And then what are some ways that I can really creatively figure out to just get the task done? If we focus on the task and not just throwing people at the problem, which is unfortunately an age-old solution to issues like, well, I have these things that need to be done. I'm going to hire another person. When the talent pool is deep and there are tons of people out there and everything is great, hey, that's all fine and good. I can do that and not a problem. But now that we have the issues that we have, we can't do that. So we have to figure out ways to get around that. Anthony, you have a point you want to make?
Yeah, I just was going to share some experience. I mean, some kind of like what's been working for me is communication with employees that I do have. So I'm not losing them frequently. Is, I've talked probably 2 or 3 or maybe even 5 off the ledge based off of some internal issues they were having. But luckily I had the conversation and they felt comfortable with me to have that conversation. And I've actually saved employees based off just being communicative, being actually just staying in communication with them consistently. Because I get complacent sometimes. If I'm busy, I can't talk to everybody all the time because I have managerial stuff I have to do that I can't really coerce with employees all day. But there is times where I try to, I call throughout the day, say, hey, how's everything going out there? Everything going well? I have like guys out here in the oil field doing, building, cryo sites for midstream and things like that. I call them every day. I had a guy just text me right now where I'm on the phone asking, hey, I haven't heard from you today. How's everything going? Because I check on these guys every single day. So that gives them a sense of belonging as well versus, me losing them based on, that lack of communication. So I was just sharing that communication has been doing very well for me, and being able to keep that connection with the employee has caused me to gain that trust and longevity out of them as well, just based off that communication. Some of the simplest things sometimes. We can look at some of the labor. We can kind of look at a thing and put that thing on it. But a lot of times my success has came from being involved in their lives as much as they would like me to. And that has been super successful for me. And I've not lost people frequently All the guys that have been with me have been for years, and they love, anything that's even tried to recruit them. They've told me about it. Because that happens a lot in the oil field. Everybody's trying to recruit somebody because they're having labor issues out there. They're having those issues. So they're always trying to recruit my guys because they're loyal and they're seasoned and they're good at what they do. So they're always wanting to recruit my guys, but they always let me know what's going on. So I just want to share that a little bit. I always, as a leader, I always try to look into myself before I look into the problem. And I've always figured out problems are always opportunities. And I don't want to drag that on, but I definitely want to say that I always refer back to me. I just do, because, I'm the leader of the bunch. So I always look back at myself and say how and what and when, and then give that example back to the employee.
Yeah, absolutely, Anthony. And the one thing that sometimes we get so wrapped up in that because, hey, face it, we're running businesses, and there's a lot of day-to-day stuff and typical things that we have to do that we get wrapped up in. But one of the things that we don't necessarily focus on as much as we should is what is the experience that people are going to have working with us and doing business with us. So with you, and it's an experience of customers and clients, vendors, employees. What is their experience? What experience do we want them to have? And Anthony, when you have what you have, and in your situation, you figured that out. And you understand what that is, and you know what you want that to be. And so you strive to do that. And what you're doing is you didn't read an article that said, hey, this is what millennial employees want, and this is what we're going to focus on giving them. No, you said, I want people that work for my organization to have this type of experience, and this is the experience that I'm going to give them. And that is so important. We've got to take the time to step back and think about experiences for the people we do business with, the people that we work for us, but also us in general. What are our experiences? What experience do we desire to get out of what we do and what we work so hard to do? Go ahead, Rand, you have a point?
Well, Anthony sounds like an amazing leader. And so just to kind of reinforce what he's saying, we ran some internal and external surveys for a hardware retail client we have with 3 stores. And we got about 300 respondents from the external survey, which are their customers, saying, giving them 9 or 10 out of 10 as far as customer satisfaction. And then we got about 80 or 90 now internal surveys back, which is rating them closer to 5. And they've never had an internal survey before. They've never really been asked whether or not they're happy. And it's really crazy that a business can be very successful. And from the outside in, they look very successful, but from the inside, they're not doing great. And so on a national level, this retail group recommends every 6 months that you check in with your employees as far as surveys go. And just giving them a voice, I think a lot of times helps to create those connection points that Anthony has. And there's a software program that we recommend for our clients, which I'll drop in the chat now, if you are interested in that employee engagement piece.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rand. And like I said, we focus so much on customer service. There's so many things out there, people talking about customer service. You can take seminars on customer service, but what do you do internally? And that's a perfect example where your customers, your clients are extremely happy, but your internal people are not. And if your internal people are not, that's going to catch up with you very quickly. And surveys are a great thing. Just gauging the general mood of your team is something. And Rand, what you're talking about, that may be maybe it is a failure of leadership at that, and maybe failure is a strong word, but maybe it's a falling down or an oversight of leadership at the very top, or maybe leadership at the very top has done a very good job of training their leaders and indoctrinating their leaders into the culture and putting their leaders through an experience, or I'm sure their immediate subordinates through the right experience, but they're not focusing on the people under them and the people under them, and as things tear down. So it's got to make it through the hierarchy, especially when you get to this realm where you're 50 to 100 to 200 to 300 employees. senior leadership cannot touch all of those people. And so you have to get buy-in from the first tier, and they have to get buy-in from the next tier, and so on and so forth. And you have to put mechanisms in place to be able to ensure that that's happening. So that could be a short sight all through the organization, but you have to pinpoint it, because you typically have a leader, a founder, an owner that is very motivated. They're bought in, they're gung-ho, and they have a few people underneath them that are bought in and motivated and gung-ho. But then the people under them, they're ho-hum about it, just simply because it is not disseminated down through the organization. So that's a great point as well. So let's go back and talk a little bit about some things that we're doing to address some of the specific challenges that we talked about earlier. Shane, we had your comments about the people that you're trying to hire, but the people that your supply chain people are trying to hire. What are some of the things that you're doing, or what are some of the things that you have been able to do at this point to be able to either solve some of these problems, or at a minimum mitigate some of the risks that you're facing as it relates to this?
Well, I think I know what we've been doing is we're just having to be upfront with our clients and change their expectation on duration of completion, because it just doesn't happen. The medical work, these hospitals, these surgical centers, every day they're not open is $100,000 in some doctor's hip pocket. And so we're just upfront with them. I have a weekly meeting on a hospital just down the street. Yesterday they said, when will we be in? And we gave them an approximate time and said, pending this, and this. Oddly enough, I've got another project that one piece that we needed was manufactured in Florida where the hurricane hit. Mm-hmm. So we have no idea when that'll come in. So I think, yeah. So it boils down to, like I tell all my guys and I share with my partners, tell them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. That's really the best thing you can do. I mean, if you lie to them, then you got to remember what the hell you told them.
Well, that's the truth. And it gets to the point where you can't remember all the lies and you get caught in them.
Exactly. So tell them the truth, because that's easy to face.
Well, and we talked about this last week in the roundtable we did up in Tomball, where we were talking about planning for uncertainty. And one of the points was these situations, just like what you're talking about, because you can't control the hurricane. You can't control a lot of your supply chain. You can't control a lot of these different things. But these issues, these problems, like you said, Anthony, they represent opportunities, but they also represent opportunities to either create or expand upon competitive advantages. And just like you said, the customer service, that represents an opportunity for customer service, right? External customer service. It represents an opportunity to establish yourself as being somebody that's honest, being somebody that's practical, being somebody that's pragmatic, with what in upfront with what a situation is going to be. And that's someone that's good to do business with, because they could go to every GC in the world and they're going to run into the same problem getting something out of Florida right now. So who would you rather do business with? The person that is going to be honest and upfront with you and tell you what the situation is and educate you on why things are going on so that you understand, or the person that's going to try to pull the wool over your eyes and make excuses and hope for the better that something is going to happen. And unfortunately, the vast majority of people out there, they choose the latter as opposed to the former. But by choosing the former, again, you separate yourself out from the pack and you give yourself the opportunity to create competitive advantages over your competitors.
But I also kind of think that part of that is as the client's chain of command comes down, they can say, okay, well, we chose this guy, whatever GC, and he gave a date, which he knew he couldn't meet. And then as it delays, well, then it takes the pressure off of that mid-level person. Well, he told me he could, so I'm in the clear because it didn't happen. So that mid-level guy didn't produce the job on time like he was supposed to for his investors, but he had an excuse. He could just pass the buck to someone else. That dirty GC didn't keep his word. Mm-hmm. Instead of him being up front and saying it's going to take a month longer because that's reality.
Yeah,
sometimes they just don't have enough guts to stand up and tell the truth themselves.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Fact.
Yeah, and it always works better to tell the truth. But sometimes it's difficult because you're afraid you're going to make the client upset. Your customer's going to get mad, and they're not going to do business with you, and you're going to lose a deal, and all these other pressures that go along with that. And some of those are reasonable, some of those are not. But it certainly, that is the prevailing mentality, is that, well, we're just gonna cover it up until something happens, and either by the time something does happen or becomes an issue, I can pawn it off on somebody else, or I'm not going to be there, so I'm not going to have to worry about it, and it's going to be somebody else's problem. And unfortunately, that happens everywhere.
We had an exact example of that happen 2 days ago.
Yeah.
We were setting tilt wall panels on a job here in Tomball. Mm-hmm. The salesman had been out there, met with my superintendent from the crane company. Mm-hmm. My guy told him, he said, we got some soft spots here. He said, no, we'll be all right. Cause we offered to provide mats, the big wood mats, you oil field guys understand that. Mm-hmm. And salesman said, no, we're good. So the crane gets out there, does some lifts, gets ready to move, moves 10 feet. We stuck a 350-ton crane that weighs 220,000 pounds.
Right.
The salesman had been there all morning until it got stuck. He got in his truck and left his entire crew there, basically stranded. And they were just, if he'd have been there, they'd have probably had our operator dig a hole and bury him. So, we fortunately found a solution, and 4 hours later, the crane moved forward. But that was a prime example. I can blame it on somebody else. Mm-hmm. When we were up front, my super told him, because we would have had to pay for the mats. And I told my guy, I said, if we got to pay for them, I don't want this monster getting stuck, because we knew we had rain coming in Monday night. Even though we only got about a half inch, that $5 million piece of equipment would still be sitting there.
Right.
On my nickel then.
That is exactly right. And but it's the cover the rear end. I mean, we deal a lot with that too. And it's, everybody wants to point fingers when something goes wrong. Now, granted, that is an opportunity. When somebody makes that mistake, it is an opportunity for you to shine and figure out a way to get through that. But it's even better if you prevent it in the first place. So that's
being proactive would have been less expensive. Fortunately, the erector had some mats literally a block away on another job here in town. They drove a truck and a forklift over here, brought them back, dismantled the crane, lifted it up, slid them under there, and we moved on.
Yeah.
But that was a 4-hour expense for about 25 people in a crane that costs probably $2,000 an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always cheaper in the long run to do things the right way and plan ahead.
So the salesman was the prime case of not telling the truth up front.
Exactly right. Anthony, you have a point you want to make.
I just wanted to agree with Shane on just being honest with the client. That's been probably the biggest attribute for me, is that, I met with one of my biggest clients yesterday in Tyler. We went to lunch, and he said, man, I know one thing with you, Anthony, I know what I'm going to get when I get it. And, clients love a delay that's met. So you may have a deadline that's supposed to be met, but we all understand that things happen, parts don't come in and things like that. But a lot of times a client, if there's a delay and you're honest about it, they love a delay that's met, and not a delay that's lied about, because then that lie will be surfaced. As I always said, ever since a terminology I use all the time is that everything comes out in the wash. So no matter what you have in your pockets, in the wash machine, it's always at the bottom of the washer when you wash your clothes. So no matter what, everything's going to come to the surface. But I agree with Shane 100%. Being honest up front and just letting the client know what the situation is. I've been outbidded several times, especially in California, with companies that kind of just say whatever to get the job, and they underbid me maybe 20% on the bid. And then next thing you know, what they do is they pad it after they get the job. They'll pad that 20% back in there with the cost of labor and things like that, and these felonious situations that occurred throughout the process. And I lose that bid, knowing that I was probably the more qualified candidate. But that I go through that all the time, and I just wanted to agree with Shane on that.
Well, and that that applies certainly to customers and clients, but it also applies to our employees, and getting back into talking about dealing with the labor shortages. This gets back into that experience that we want employees to have, and we certainly need to be honest with them and in the situation. And if somebody wants to work remote and they can't, telling them honestly why they can't is a very important thing. Instead of saying, well, it's this way because I want it to be this way. Well, that's not a very good example. It's not a very good excuse, not a very good reason. But if we tell them, look, you can't because of this, and this is what I want, and this is what I expect, and this is why the situation is what it is, being upfront with them, being honest with them, not being dismissive with them, and basically treating them like someone that you can just replace very easily, because guess what? You can't, especially in this day and age. The same type of mentality applies to that and the experience that we want people to have. I mean, how many times do we run into situations with employees where you have to have a very hard conversation, or you don't want to tell them something, or you tell them something else and something else happens? That happens a lot. Or when we're structuring a job for them and we're structuring what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, how oftentimes are we not honest with the situation, or how many times are we not even honest with ourselves about what our expectations are? So what we were talking about with those two examples absolutely applies to how we handle employees internally. Rand, you have a comment you want to make?
Well, just as far as overall salaries go, I've got a little bit of good news and bad news, statistically speaking, and I've got it on the local level too. So Texas ranks 35th out of 50 states for an average annual salaries, coming in around 52 grand. Westlake, Texas is the highest paid at 85, where Dallas is around 65,000 a year, Houston 59,000, Odessa 49,000, and Tomball is about $47,000 a year. Now, in 2022, salaries were increasing by around 5.4% a year. And they're expecting that to go down to about 4.3% per year. So although things, for a 10-person company in Tomball, that probably is about $1,000 a month that it went up this year, it'll slowly start to get back down to that average, that 10-year average of 3% increase in salaries. So just wanted to give a little bit of hope as far as the salary increases. I'm sure that everybody's feeling those going up. And what that looks like planning for next year, and really interested to hear what the group is planning to do as far as salaries and raises for 2023.
Yeah, I do want to pose that question to the group. A couple of comments on that is, over the course of the last 5-6 years, the majority of small and mid-sized companies, basically what you would consider Main Street, have been raising salaries. And there's not a lot of data that we've seen behind why they've been raising salaries. I think a lot of it was they felt that created a competitive advantage for people going to work with them and not being poached by other companies. They figured, well, I'm a small company, I can't offer the benefits, but I'll offer the higher salary. So I think that was part of that was a way to entice people. But salaries have certainly been going up. And Randy, you mentioned 5.3%. Unfortunately, inflation's over 8%. So it's people are actually getting a pay cut. But then you also have the other pressures on companies to increase that. I mean, margins are getting squeezed because raw material prices are going up. And you also have situations where business is going down. So I'm not in a position to give you an 8% raise just because of the nature of what business and the market is doing. So there are pressures from both sides on that. So I think there's a lot behind those numbers. And Denise, you sent a comment out, and I think certainly that's a very good comment, is that cost of living goes into it as well. Your cost of living in a lot of these places in Texas is much less than it is out in California, New York, Illinois, even some parts of Florida. So consequently, salaries have to be higher. But I think what it goes to show you is that just throwing money at the problem may or may not necessarily be the creative solution. But I'd like to pose that question to the rest of the group. What are y'all doing as far as it comes to raising compensation? Go ahead, Shane.
We just reviewed that actually last week, and everybody that's been here over a year got anywhere from 3 to 7% raises starting November 1st.
Right.
Just that simple. So earlier in the year, I think in May, we gave straight across the board, we gave everybody 3% just because price of fuel had gone up, groceries, everything else. I won't get into politics, but we did it. And then we sat down and actually reviewed it per individual and looked at where they were at. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of that, we had to let a good super go during COVID because we just didn't have any work for him and his specific type. He went to work for the big people, like Anthony was talking about losing, and he left them and came back to us and took a pay cut because of the way we operate and who we are. So my partner and I took that as a compliment that he came back and was willing to work for a pay cut. He's still making more than when he left here, but he's not making as much as he was at the big statewide competitor who has an enormous overhead and could afford it to keep him, but they chose not to do it that way.
Well, and see, the question with that is, how are you able to pull it off? Because some companies, the last thing that they can do right now is increase overhead. So how are you guys able to pull that off and not necessarily cut too much out of your margins?
We have a set rate we charge. And, we work on part of that as our labor burden and offsetting the insurance. We pay for every employee's full health insurance, medical, or the medical, dental, vision, and long-term disability. So we have a little lagniappe in their salary based on our estimating program. And just plain old, if it comes out of buying and Son's part, our part, well, then we look at it as a long-term investment. Pay it forward, do the right thing, because it would cost us more than their pay raise to replace them and reorient them to the way we operate.
Right, absolutely. But that also goes to a certain point. So where does it get to the point where it's less expensive to go out and replace them than it is to not?
Well, sometimes having a cheaper, less experienced superintendent on a job, the price difference, they can make one mistake that can cost you the difference in their salary.
Yeah.
We can't be on every site and babysit everything that they're doing. They can authorize something or make a decision. And it's like I tell them, I said, guys, that doesn't come out of your paycheck, it comes out of mine. So pull your head out and do the right thing.
Yeah.
You got a question, give me a call. Otherwise, you can't make a mistake if you don't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and, again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. In order to give this pay raises, the money and the margins have to be there. And I think that illustrates why it is so important to understand the margins that you're making, understand how your costs are going up or going down, and how you can adjust your prices accordingly, and maybe where some other cuts you can make so that you can provide those raises to your employees or pay those extra benefits, things of that nature. So it's something we really as leaders have to be cognizant of.
Well, the reality for us is when we bid a job based on duration. Mm-hmm. If a man is given 6 months to finish his project and it takes him 7 months, he just ate up a lot of money straight out of our profit. Mm-hmm. But if you got that guy motivated and he knows he's got a raise and it's going to help his bonus, if he gets it done in 5.5 months, that gives me 2 weeks of lagniappe overhead that I can redistribute and basically give back. So while you just can't have I always say you can't manage what you can't measure. That's one of them that's kind of hard to do. In theory, you can, but if they can get the job done sooner, your margin goes up.
Right. That's correct.
By giving them an increase, you've motivated them.
Well, absolutely. And, me personally, I'm a big proponent of performance-based pay plans because it motivates people to do well, and it motivates people to do certain things. And even with administrative tasks or some more mundane functions, you can always introduce a performance-based aspect into that, because the last thing that any of us really want to afford is people sitting around and not being productive and having to worry about productivity, but also having to worry about giving pay increases. So performance-based pay plans are certainly something. And again, they can be very, very creative. I mean, you can pay off of how many, I'm just throwing stuff out there. You can pay off of how many jobs you estimate, or you can pay a bonus for what you do, or especially, Shane, like you were talking about, giving bonuses for finishing things ahead of time because your margin's going up anyway. So why don't I take that money and instead of just stacking it all to my bottom line, give it to that person that's going to, or give a portion of it to that person that's going to ensure that we meet that deadline, or we come in well short of that deadline.
We did something similar. The same guy that we hired back had worked in a previous facility 3 times. And we just happened to pick up a small job there, which we really didn't want because I had nobody to put on it. Mm-hmm. And so we just said, look, we'll give you X amount of money if you go knock this out on and not affect the main project you're running. Right. Handle the overtime, handle the weekends. You got 3 weekends, go knock it out. So he's going to get an extra check for doing that. And I didn't have to go hire another person, take them up there, introduce them to a brand new facility because we had infection control scenarios and things of that. Mm-hmm. And, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. So got to get flexible.
But nowadays it makes sense. Jaime, you got a point you've been wanting to make.
Well, I was going to mention that that's how our business works as far as technicians in automotive shops. They get paid basically on performance, given sometimes that, because of parts, we have to wait for parts. It takes longer to repair a vehicle. But for most part, our employees, we have them clock in and clock out just to see how much time they're putting into in everyday basis. Most of the time, every 2 weeks, they put in about 85 hours in 2 weeks. And we lost one person earlier in the year. And I said, okay, let's see what happens without this person. So come to realize with one less person, we've been doing more work because they know they get paid on performance, and we've been doing more work with one less person. Mm-hmm. So I was able to give them, am I still on?
Yeah.
I don't know what I have here.
No, I think I had a little connectivity issue. Welcome to the remote world.
Your picture froze, but we can hear you.
Well, you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
We were able to give them a raise, a small raise due to that person having left. But because they work on performance basis, within 2 weeks worth of work, we, as a team, put in sometimes close to 200 hours in 2 weeks. So they work about 85 hours every 2 weeks, and they get paid for somewhere between 150 the 210, 220 hours every 2 weeks. So, and they know that. So, because they know that the more work they do, if a job takes 3 hours to do it, they do it in an hour and a half, they're still getting paid for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So it motivates them to do the job and do it right. Of course, we don't want no comebacks. We don't want, low quality work being done either. We want them to take their time to do it right initially, yet learn how to do it efficiently and right the first time. Let me see if I can connect back here.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and there you are, Jaime, you're back.
Yes.
And again, it's all about motivation. And as we manage people, as we manage our teams, as we build our teams, we have to focus on and understand motivations. And we're going to talk a little bit about this in the roundtable next month as we talk about working, bridging the gap with younger generations. But we have to understand motivations. And if we understand what people are motivated by, then we can create things to motivate them. And if they're motivated by money, they're motivated by what's in that paycheck, which, let's face it, most people are. And that's a good thing. Then what can we do to create motivations for them there? If they're motivated by being a part of a team, if they're motivated by a job well done, if they're motivated by just seeing something come together, whatever it is that they're motivated, if they're motivated by helping someone out, whatever they're motivated by, we have to understand that, and we have to incentivize them and cater to those motivations, and make sure that we're pushing them forward, or that they're in a position so that they can achieve the things that they're motivated to achieve. And then that all comes back down to this whole management and retention aspect of things. Camille, I'd like to touch a little bit on what you were talking about previously with having to go out and hire the younger technicians and things of that nature, because that was a big shift for you. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how you were able to creatively compensate for that and make that work for you. Because I think as we continue to deal with labor shortages, we're certainly going to have to, in some cases, make do with what we have, or make do with what's available. So what are some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them as it related to that?
Well, the first problem I had was getting buy-in from my existing techs, because they're the ones that have to do the training. I can't train. I'm not the one that goes out every day and, works on servers and routers and that kind of stuff. So I had to get buy-in from them. And that was difficult at first, because I'd say, okay, I need you to train so-and-so how to do this. And they go, well, it's just easier for me to do it myself than to take the time to train him. Well, so I had to have conversations with them in a gentle way of, look, you've been complaining about how much your workload is. I will never be able to fix that unless you train this person to take some of that off your plate. And so it took a while, and it also took, sometimes I just had to really, with a leap of faith, hope that send them out and, give them the tools they needed to do the job, but also make sure that they felt comfortable calling the experienced techs and saying, I've got this far. This is what I think I need to do. Is that right? And then sometimes them getting on a remote session. And what was interesting is the first client I sent my first junior tech out to, the client called me and just told me how wonderful he was, even though he had to pick up the phone and just confirm some stuff. So, I just had to get creative on getting buy-in from the guys on working with them. Because again, they said, by the time I train him, I can just have it done myself. But that's not the point. So that was my first hurdle. And then, fortunately, so far, I've been able to find really good, conscientious young people to bring in and get them comfortable of, it's okay if you don't know what to do. If you get out there and you have no clue, it's okay to call the other guys and have them walk you through it. So that's kind of how I've dealt with it. And now like I told the team that we've hopefully, fingers crossed, if the references check out and the background check works well, we have a new guy coming on board, and I told the guys about that today, and I didn't have that pushback I did the first time I hired somebody.
Yep, absolutely. Well, you got people trained, you change their, you basically change their expectations and change their view towards bringing in these new people. And that's one of the things I always laugh about is like, well, I just might as well do it myself because I can do it faster. I'm like, well, you can do it faster for a little while, or you can do it faster, but then what else suffers because you're not doing it because you're still doing it yourself. And that's a very, very tough transition for people to make because they feel like they're giving up something and they're really not. You're still doing your job, but in order for the organization to grow, more people have to come in and do certain things. Otherwise, you're 100% limited by how much you can do, and there are only 24 hours in the day. So that's pretty funny excuse. But hey, we've all made it. We've all done it. We're all guilty. Me certainly. I'm guilty of that as well. So we ourselves internally have to make those adjustments to compensate for that. And then the other thing you mentioned that I really like is that you're making sure you're hiring the right people. So you're taking care to hire the right people, but you're giving them the tools that they need and letting them do their thing. And if they have to ask questions, if they have to do things, but you're hiring people that are going to ask questions and do things, they're not going to come up with some type of shortcut just to get by something that they don't know, or they're afraid to come and say, hey, this was something that I don't know. Well, it's gonna cost me my job and end up losing you a client or something like that. So hiring the right people, properly motivating and putting them in the positions and letting them be successful certainly is important as we look into bringing on and retaining and building those good teams.
It was interesting when we interviewed this one candidate. My client service manager asked him a pretty tough IT question, and we made it very clear it was okay to ask clarifying questions, and it was okay to not know the complete answer. And so through the talking through that we were able to we were very satisfied with he would be good with asking questions. And the other questions we ask a lot is temperament, because sometimes, we have to go to a client that's down, and when their network is down, they are not in a happy mood. And, they we've had clients yell at us when it's not our fault, but we're just the person that's there, and they can't yell at Comcast, so they yell at us. And you got to be able to just say, okay, I get it. I know you're upset, and not take it personally and, hey, I'm leaving.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in your situation, and even some cases in ours, the messenger needs to be bulletproof because they're getting shot at a lot. So, but it's just a function of who's there. But yeah, temperament, and the other thing is that, and I've actually sat in basically they were interviews for temporary positions, and there was one where the guy doing the interviewing and doing the question asking was asking some very gray area questions, and the person gave the answer and he was just like, wrong answer. And I was sitting there thinking, it's like, well, no, actually that's the right answer depending on what depending on the situation. When you ask a very open-ended question, you expect a very closed-ended answer. And then you basically yell at someone because they didn't give you the answer that you wanted. Well, guess what? You're not going to hire a lot of people. And subsequently, the guy that was asking those questions didn't last very long in that position just because of that mentality. But it is okay for people to say, I don't know. It's one thing to say, I don't know, but it's another thing to say, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. Because we encounter things every day. It doesn't matter who you are, how smart you are, how many experiences you've had, you encounter something new every day. And it's not always the skills to know exactly what to do in that situation. It's the skills to figure out what to do in that situation, because situations are certainly unique. Rand, you've got a point you'd like to make?
Just a quick question for Camille, and maybe if anyone else has any tips here, but just curious, when you're bringing on your, you mentioned some junior people and now this person, did you see an uptick in applicants over the last quarter? It was pretty crazy for us. In quarter one, we would maybe get 30 applicants for a role. And then in quarter two, it kind of jumped up to maybe 100. And then now in quarter three, we saw close to 300 applicants for one role. Has anyone seen any increases or decreases in the total number of applicants they're getting?
So personally, I don't post a job. I do on LinkedIn and Facebook. I get mine all by word of mouth because I have found that posting someplace like Indeed or one of those job boards, I just get overrun with applicants that are not qualified. And by the time I go through all the rest of resumes, I might have one that even knows what the words information technology mean. So
I have to agree with Camille. That's the same thing. I did post for a job, and I don't usually, but saw a huge increase in the number of applicants and an even bigger increase in unqualified applicants. Even if you're clear about needing experience or something in a field, and I say that all the time, I need somebody who can at least spell insurance. And I mean, 99% of the applicants that I saw were in no way, shape, or form qualified. And by that, I mean, like, they didn't even have customer service. They didn't have any technical skills. There wasn't anybody that had sales experience. It wasn't even anything I felt like, oh, I can work with that.
We have a similar situation. I guess those people that came yesterday looking for a job, and they hadn't even touched a wrench, I believe. The other thing, is that they didn't know no English. And I was asking my manager, Jonathan, I said, well, how do they expect to work here? Our computers, they explain everything in English. I mean, they don't even know how to read English. So how do they expect to have a job here with no skills and no English? I mean, that's yes.
Well, I was going to ask that because you said that. We had a technician from a large internet provider out at our place last week because a cable got cut and we didn't shoot the messenger, Camille. But the gentleman that showed up, and I'm appreciative because they know how to fix that stuff and I don't, but the gentleman that company sent spoke absolutely no English. And so he's trying to communicate with me that he needs to shut my internet down, which is kind of a critical thing for us. We were working on a backup, but I've never had a provider like that send someone out to a job who had no ability to communicate. And I don't care whether it was German, French, or any other language, but why would you? I've never had that happen before. And it's got to be a factor of this labor market is they're hiring whoever they can for jobs without any thought to how that's going to work with their end client.
Well, and that's really segues into what I wanted to touch on for the last few minutes is some things that that we can do as business communities to help solve this problem because you're right. I mean, there are certain core skills that people are going to need to work certain jobs. And we've talked about this again ad nauseum, where the people that are out there just do not, either they don't have the core skills and they don't have the core values to really work the jobs that we need them to work, or they don't have the foundation to learn the core skills and the core values. And so, yes, the number of applicants is going up. And I think, Rand, what you're seeing is that more people are saying either they were out of the workforce and they're saying, okay, I need to get back into the workforce, or they left and went for jobs with larger companies that now that they're seeing recession on the horizon, which, really honestly, I think general consensus is it's already here. But they see that and they start laying off. And so some of these people are starting to lay off and they're starting to go back to look for work. And or maybe they're thinking that maybe they're still on unemployment and they have to apply for positions. That was a big deal back in 20 and 21, where you were getting a lot of unqualified applicants because they had to show that they were applying for jobs and looking for work to stay on unemployment. Or you may have people that are saying, well, this job offers me an opportunity to work remote. So guess what? I'm going to go work remotely and I'm just going to apply for every remote work job that's out there because that's what I want to do, not necessarily considering whether or not they're qualified for it. So that's a big part of this. And this is why the really big word with all of this is qualified, because there's still people out there. There are more people here today in the United States than there were a year ago, and than there were a year before that. There are people, new people every day. It's just a function of, are they qualified to work the jobs that they need? Shane, go ahead.
Well, we have what we've been facing, and it's been going on for a while, and it's getting worse instead of better. A lot of times we'll hire just temporary help, need a guy or two to show up that can operate a broom. And regardless how the instructions are written, whatever language, they're non-functional. And what's worse is we'll call and ask, say we need 3 guys. We'll be lucky to get 2 that show up within an hour or 2 of when they were supposed to be there. And even luckier if they make it past 12. And here's a piece of concrete. Here's a broom and a shovel. Can you clean this? I mean, those are things that you can get a 6th grader to do. But we can't, and we've switched labor services. I mean, people we've been using for years, they said they can't get help. And I mean, that's just plain old laziness, because it requires nothing to do that. Pick this up and move it from point A to point B. I mean, Helen Keller can do this stuff, and it's just not happening. So I don't understand all this whining about no jobs, and this doesn't require any training.
Well, I think what it boils down to is that we worry a lot about the skills that we're teaching people. We don't worry a lot about the core values that we're teaching people. And if you're not motivated to go, because everybody is capable of pushing a broom and cleaning off a piece of concrete. You're exactly right. That does not require a lot of skill. But the thing is that what it does require is it requires the core value to say, hey, I'm going to do this. I may not like this job, but I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well. And I'm going to do it right. I'm going to show up on time. And so those core values have not been taught. And getting back to the language thing is, I think the language thing is, to take the politics out of it, it's about making sure that people have the skills that they need to be successful. And if one of us is going to go work in another country, well, guess what? We better learn the language, because we're not going to be successful if we don't learn the language or we're not capable of understanding the language. And then with some of these other things, then certainly, skills. And that's the thing that we tend to talk most about is, do they have the skills? And this is, to touch on what we've been doing in these different communities, where just bringing the business communities together to talk about what we need and working with community partners in order to help create and retain talent in the markets. I mean, we're working with the local school districts. We're working with the chambers of commerce. We're bringing the voice of the business communities together to talk about this and say, hey, we need this. What initiatives can we put in place to do this, instead of leaving it to the different pieces to try to figure out things on their own? And maybe they come together and maybe they don't. But the thing is that the focus is on skills. It is, okay, we need welders. I need people that can work machinery in manufacturing facilities. I need people that have this certification, that know how to drive a truck. I have these types of things. And we focus on these types of things. And we need to. We absolutely need to, because there's a shortage of all of those out there. You have a lot of people that have been educated and conditioned to be something else, and not the people that can work those jobs. And I see a lot of change. I think we'd all agree we do see a lot of change with that. Now, this is generational change. It's not something that happens overnight, but we can all agree that there is change going on. But then the other problem is, okay, well, we're teaching core skills, but now are we teaching core values? And I think that's a big takeaway from this group that we need to take back to our individual groups, is that we also need to be teaching about or talking about the teaching of core values to the people that are coming up in the community. And then we also need to be evaluating the core values of people that we want to stay and work in this community, that we want to refer back and forth, or that we want to groom to be community leaders, or to do good work in our communities. So that's something we haven't really talked a lot about. But getting back to the whole skill thing is we do have some things, and we take with our roundtables. We take all of them. We take just a few minutes at the beginning to say, okay, well, let's talk about labor. Let's talk about labor shortages. Let's talk about what we're seeing. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Let's talk about some creative ideas that we have to get out and help with this. And it may allow us to hire people, but it may allow other people to hire people if it doesn't allow us to hire people. And that makes things better, because, Shane, if you can get somebody, one of your suppliers, one of your vendors, to be able to hire people, if you can create a situation where it's easier for them to hire people, then guess what? It makes your job easier. So it's not just necessarily for us, it's for our communities as a whole. But some of the creative things that we've talked about is participating more all the way down in middle school. I mean, getting people excited about working jobs that they typically weren't excited about working before, jobs that we need. We've talked about getting together as a group and saying, okay, well, if Camille interviews someone, and I'll talk with, among you three, you guys are in the same community, but if Camille interviews someone and it's not a person that has the core skills that Camille needs, but they have the core values that will make them successful elsewhere, well, why shouldn't Shane or Denise look at that person to see if that's someone that they could bring on board? So our business community being more interested in saying, okay, well, this is someone that I interviewed. They're good for the community. They're not good for me. But let me have a medium where I can show that to the rest of the community, and they can potentially hire this someone, or you have to lay someone off. And where does that person go? Well, your business may not have a place for them, but somebody else's business may. So what can we do to not just create people, but when we get people in the community, to keep them in the community? One of the other things that we've talked about is taking our employees and people that have come to our communities to work and introducing them to other community leaders and getting them to meet other people in the community. We do a lot of this talking out in Midland, Odessa, about it. It's a wonderful community. It's a wonderful place to be. It has a very negative stigma just because of a lot of different things. There are a lot of stereotypes out there. So someone will come out there, they'll work a job. Maybe they hate the job. Maybe they hate the company that they work for, but they move there for the opportunity. But as soon as that job is over, they can't wait to go somewhere else. So they're going to try to transfer to someone else, because they never have a chance to meet the leaders in the community, to meet the people in the community, to really get involved with the thing that makes the community what it is. And that's the people. So those are just a few of the things that we've been working on in the other roundtables just to help with this issue. So we're coming up to, typically we're an hour and a half, 2 hours on these. We're pretty flexible in the time. But Rand, do we have any points that we want to hit for our attendees Do we have anything that they would like for us to address or talk about? Or does anybody on the panel have any thing that they want to throw in there before we start talking about wrapping up?
I got one question for smaller companies. We have, full-time right now, we only have 13. You were talking about the questionnaires earlier. To do a questionnaire for a company our size, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to tell who writes down what, no matter how the questionnaire is done. I don't think that would be as effective because it'd be really hard for it to be an anonymous reply. So what's another solution to that? I mean, obviously, like we do in the rodeo, we send it to all our committees and hundreds of people are throwing darts at us or telling us what all we do wrong because nothing's ever right. Any suggestions when you have smaller people how to get their open feedback without fear of termination or retaliation?
I think you have to work harder with culture, and it's not an easy solution because mine's probably even harder than yours, Shane. I only have 7 people in my office, so there's no anonymity. Even if I just give you a fill in the blank or a short answer, I'm going to be able to tell who did what. But we just worked really hard on creating that open forum and that feeling that like I want to know if there's something not working. I want to fix it if it's possible. And sometimes I've even found it's not things that need to be fixed. It's just that I didn't do a good job of explaining the background of decisions or why things were going on behind the scenes. And but I have to purpose to do it twice a year, reassure everybody, I want your feedback, I need direction. There's no way for me to do this anonymously. So we're going to have to trust each other that, you can give me that information to help make this place better for all of us.
Well, then maybe we are doing okay because we have an open door policy and they know it. And usually if they got something that's really bothering them, they'll tell one of our coordinators and then they'll come tell us.
Yeah.
They'll go talk. I mean, they'll talk to each other and it gets back to us. But I mean, we have an open door policy. So maybe I don't need to worry about I guess we're not doing that bad if they're all still here.
Yeah. And maybe those questionnaires can be structured in a way that it is a little bit, it could be a little bit more anonymous, because I will say that we went through this exercise back several years ago, and there were a couple of things that came out that even we're the same way. I mean, we have a very, very open door policy, and we're all like-minded and work extremely well together and have been for quite some time. But there were a few things that came out with that. And it was one of those things like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, our core team's really been handpicked. So can I really tell who's making what comment? But a lot of things did come out. So there's a way you can structure that, Shane, where it's not it's more anonymous, but it does give you some information. Anthony, you have something you wanted to share.
No, I just wanted to agree with that as well. Just being kind of giving the employees the opportunity to know that I'm still somewhat of a approachable individual, to where they sometimes maybe a little too approachable. And I want to touch a little bit on the West Texas thing. I've been in the Permian Basin since probably 2010, and I know I'm on a lot of different boards now. I'm on the Parks and Recreation Board. I'm on some of the other city council stuff that I'm always involved in, and leadership programs and all that. And we're really, really trying to make our parks better, making our community better, giving more things for people to do. So people don't just come here to work and then they just want to hurry up and go back home, because evidently we want people to stay. So we're doing the best we can right now to try to build the community out so we can actually get people to not just come here to work. And we go from, 300,000 population to 70 when, the work slows down, whatever case like that. But we really want to encourage people, family, kids to want to come here and bring their families and actually be a part of the community. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. As far as the stigma is concerned, we are working very heavily on trying to get that situated. But as far as being approachable, that's been a great attribute for me, just giving them sharing some experience on that. And a lot of guys feel that they have skin in the game, because I always make them feel like they're a part of the team. Like they don't just work for me, but they're part of the team as well. And that gives them that even a sense of like responsibility within the organization, to where they'll stand up for a situation that applies to the company, not just for themselves, but, you know, they say, I make you look good when I look good, you know? So a lot of times that's said to me a lot. And then, and that's been a big key player for me, is just involving them in things that are going on. If there's things they want to see change, implement the change if it's suitable to the organization and the culture, right? But when they see the implement of change and they were a part of that, that's almost like skin in the game. So they start feeling like a part of, instead of just a piece of, you know. So I just, that's been a great attribute of mine. You know, you can't do that for everybody. If you're, you know, 40,000 employees like Jacobs or something like that, you can't do that. But that's been a great for me for a smaller entity.
Yeah, and I will say that we certainly need to take the mentality for this issue that we take with all issues, internal or external, that we just have to sit down and approach them and work through them. And, you know, be it situations with employees, be it situations with customers or clients or vendors or whatever it is, we just need to have this mentality that we're going to sit down and we're going to work through this, and we're going to find resolutions to whatever situations that are gonna come our way. But it's a team effort. We have to work through it together, and but it is our responsibility to basically lead from the front. I mean, that's what is important, that people see that you have skin in the game. They see that you're in it with them, and they see that the situations that they're going to come across, you're going to be able to work through. And I think that certainly goes a long way towards retention. Rand, you have a hand up.
Just two quick statistics. I'll support that. Exactly what you're talking about, which is the number one measurement of whether or not an employee or a teammate or, you know, anyone in the workplace is going to be successful is grit. And it's not experience. It's not always anything other than just determination. And so in looking at that during the hiring process, I think it's really important. There's a great book out called Grit, if anyone ever wants to take a peek at that. And then the other thing, statistically, the top two questions every employee is thinking at all times, as far as statistics go, are, am I doing a good job and am I going to get fired? And even though you can tell them over and over and over again that they're doing a good job and that they are not going to get fired, those questions still remain with them. So just a friendly reminder. And then I'll do a quick push for next month as soon as we're ready, Maurice.
Yeah, I think we're ready. First of all, I just want to thank everybody that attended, and if we have anybody else that would like to participate, certainly reach out to us that would like to sit on the panel, participate in the panel. We'll get that information to you. But go ahead, Rand, and we can go ahead and wrap up. Perfect.
Yeah, I just dropped it in the chat, but basically next month's roundtable will be about bridging the gap with younger generations. So I'm sure that everybody can relate to how difficult it is to communicate to younger generations, whether they're your customers or your employees. And so Maurice will be diving into that, and then expect a recap from today's meeting as far as takeaways go, and an invitation to that next one coming soon.
Yeah, excellent. And thank you so much, Rand. I will say for the next one is that we're going to have a lot of fun with that topic. So
yeah, I would like to just throw something in. Maybe we can talk next time about something I found out 2 weeks ago when I went to the local college, because we are trying to get our shop, I guess, up to date, you know, keeping up with technology, with the new vehicles, new sensors, camera systems, and everything that goes with alignments. And I went to the local college to get two of my guys to go get trained in the new ADAS systems. And found out that the college has had this system in place that was donated to them 2 years ago, but they've never trained anybody on it. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why aren't you using this equipment, to train people? And they don't even have a class for it for my guys to go get trained. So I'm going back today and see if I can get some guys signed up so they can start using that system. I mean, a lot of it has to do with qualification, has to do with education. So, and it starts in our schools and our colleges. So maybe next time we can talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we can reserve a few minutes to talk about that, because that's something that is going to have to be driven significantly over time. It's something that we as business leaders and especially business leaders getting together in our communities is something that's going to have to continue to be pushed. Go ahead, Rand.
Jaime, just to respond to that real quick, as far as my personal experience, reaching out to your local economic development person, if you have one, either within the city, town, or the county, and then having them reach out to the community college. There are a ton of federal grant programs that will fund, and it's mostly exactly what you're talking about, a lack of an instructor. So they don't have anyone who can actually build the curriculum that can teach it. But the economic development people are the ones charged with going and finding that person and figuring out that federal grant money, how it gets to the college and how the college can do that. So if you're talking to them in the next week or two, before our next conversation, that's just some reference points from me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rand. Okay. Well, do we, anybody else have anything before we wrap up? I think this was a very good event. I think everybody enjoyed it. Like I said, I want to thank everybody that attended. We will be doing this monthly, and we'll get the dates and the topics out to everybody shortly. Go ahead, Rand.
Well, just one last question. Shane, is it harder to hire foremen right now or to kill a bear? I'm just curious as to the giant thing you've got back there. Is that a bear?
Mm-hmm, it was.
You're gonna try and close out on a laugh.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's harder to hire foremen.
Yeah, definitely. This only took one bullet.
Yeah, I think hiring a foreman is probably about like trying to kill that bear with a pocket knife.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank everybody thank y'all everybody for attending and participating, and thank you to all of the other attendees. Look forward to seeing you guys next month on the 30th.
All right. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Maurice.